Welcome, everybody. It's Rock Talk with Doc Rocker. I'm Jeff Bonomo with the Doc Rocker, and we are discussing our homework assignments for the week. That's right. Every week we give each other homework assignments, an album to listen to that we've never heard before. So this week I got another classic album by Kansas, Monolith. And Danton, what did you get?
I got an album I never heard of by a group I've never heard of, and it was pretty much a genre I've never heard of. It took me to a different universe. It is Spiral Architect, a Sceptic's universe.
A Skeptic's universe, but that's right.
Yeah, so
Not a Sceptic universe.
It took me for a ride, man. It was awesome. I loved it. I listened to it like straight through just once right before jumping on for tonight's show, figuring that would be the best time to do it, like when everything's fresh. And the first impression for me is I have to listen to it like 2 or 3 more times just to figure out what the heck is going on with all of it. Because it's definitely progressive metal, but like it's so much more than that too, you know. And I know you mentioned, like as we were talking about our assignments this week, that like most of the musicians in this group were in black metal bands. So that's just a really off the wall, interesting combination that I've never heard of before. A bunch of black metal musicians playing like something like super, super proggy and kind of fusion-y at the same time. There's a lot, you know, especially like the thing that stuck out to me the most was the bass player, just the way that the bass is played and just all the different techniques that he's using and just how it really sits in the mix. And it's, you know, it's definitely the opposite of what you'd hear on any black metal album, you know. For those, you know, watch our episode on black metal and talk about how some black metal artists don't even have bass. It's just guitar and drums, and that's all you need. It's really, really guitar centric, but having something that really the bass was like this really prominent, punchy force of nature to be reckoned with, and it took me for a ride, and I definitely want to listen to it again.
Now that album came out, I believe, in the year 2000, so that's like over 20 years old. Mm-hmm. So to me, that album was way ahead of its time because I don't think anyone was doing stuff like that at that level back then, especially black metal artists from, I think,
not even the prog guys, you know, Dream Theater. Let's think in 2000. I would say that's right around the time they were putting out 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Yeah, which has some real heavy and like some real crazy progressive stuff. Sure. Yeah, no, nothing like this. This is totally different. Crazy.
And I revisited this album this past week because I kind of forgot about it. I mentioned it, I think, once in one of our earlier podcasts, maybe one of the first or second ones. I mentioned it, but I didn't really look it up until it just popped in my head the other day, and I'm like, oh, I should assign this to Danton. I think you'd really, really enjoy this. This is something weird. So I went back and I listened to it, and I'm like, wow. Yeah, this he definitely has to hear this. Definitely. So it's strange.
Yes, strange is a good way to describe it.
It's a lot like some of that newer like math metal type bands. Like they're taking prog just going crazy with it. And this is the only thing they've ever done. Like this band, I think, was more of a project from a bunch of different black metal guys and guys in like Norwegian heavy metal, and they just went crazy with it. Like, hey, let's write the most complicated thing we possibly can.
Yeah, and it definitely delivers on that front. It's really complex, but it's not like so grotesquely complex that like it's a turnoff to like somebody's not going to try to wrap their head around it. But it's one of those like I listened to it all like at once and I was following along track by track and like, whoa, I don't have a clue. I got to do this again and try to figure out what's going on here. So yeah, so that's my impression. I dug it. I thought it was great.
You dig it? You'll listen to it again?
Major thumbs up. It's funny because, you know, since it's not on Spotify, Jeff sent me a link to a YouTube video that just plays the whole album, and it's nice because it has like in the description like timestamps for every song and all that, which is especially nice for this more progressive stuff because like one song can have 3 or 4 different parts and it's a little tough to follow. So it's nice to have the timestamps to follow along, especially when you don't have a physical album in your hand that you can read along with. So he gave it to me earlier in the week and I put it on. I have a nice little watch later queue that I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. So I put it right at the bottom of my watch later so I'd find it. And when I was listening to it, instead of just taking it off my watch later, I just left it on there. Like, all right, let me come back later and listen to it again. So I could get a better idea of what's going on musically.
I actually have that album somewhere physically. I actually physically have the CD. I bought it like back then. in 2000, like, again, I'll mention the web board that I used to go to constantly was metalrules.com. Doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. The website still does, but it's mainly just a news site now.
Mhm.
I used to go to that web board constantly, and I would read and discover new metal from there. And I discovered so much new great stuff by just sitting on that web board when I was supposed to be working at my job. This was before I work at the job I work now. This was my old job, so we could talk about how I used to fuck around, back then. That doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, I would visit that web board daily. As soon as I'd punch in and I'd go and I'd read up on, who's talking about what. And this was one of the bands that would come up over and over again as like pretty much, you got to hear this crazy metal, this crazy prog metal. That's pretty much what like the thread would be. And it would be Spiral Architect or somebody similar to that. There's a few bands like that, but that's the one that always stuck in my head was that band. I don't know what the guys are doing now, that band. I don't know what bands they're in. So, and I don't think they're doing anything else like this ever again. So who knows, but I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was definitely a treat and a gem.
Good. Enjoy it. Because and there you go. And that's what our homework is about, expanding our horizons. And now we're going to go back in time to 1979 for an album I've never heard. I've never heard any of these songs. It is Monolith by Kansas, the 6th studio album by Kansas, released in 1979, is their first album that they produced themselves. And you can't tell. It sounds like everything else. Because, a lot of times when the bands will produce an album themselves, it tends to sound crappier, or it just tends not to be as good. Because they don't have someone.
Yeah.
They don't have someone over their shoulder saying, like, don't do that, do this, My first impression of this album, it's a Kansas album. It's standard Kansas goodness for the most part. Music is like a little bit rockier, a little bit heavier, a little bit less proggy, I thought, than the other stuff. Actually,
yeah,
the little great solid like 1-2 opener on the other side, right into People of the South Wind.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a pretty straight up pop rock up tempo song.
Yeah.
Which I really liked the first 2 songs, perfect openers for this album. Fun fact: the Native Americans who lived along the Kansas River were known as Kansa, or the Kaw Nation, and that actually means the people of the South Wind. So Kansas actually means the people of the South Wind. Hence the name of the song, I'm assuming. So
yeah, I actually didn't know that. That makes sense.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. A little fun fact: Native Americans that lived on the Kansas River were known as the Kenza tribe or the Kenzie tribe or the Kaw Nation. There's a bunch of different names. I had to look that up because when I was reading up on the album, something mentioned that, so I had to go look it up and stuff. That was neat. Now the lyrics in that song, "People of the South Wind," kind of, sort of about that, but not really. It's more about like traveling the world, how the band, they are the people of the South Wind. But great song, great. I mean, poppy.
Definitely one of their most popular now. They always do that like on acoustic sets.
Yeah, that was a video for it. That was one of their singles. Mm-hmm. The standouts really were the first 4 tracks, but I really like "How My Soul Cries Out for You." I thought was a really cool song because that was like where the album became different. Like that song, different than the first 4. The first 4 had the same kind of vibe to it a little bit because it sounded like Kansas. This one just is where Kansas goes, takes a little left turn, which is great. Great song. "Stay Out of Trouble," good rocker, not as good as the rest, but that's my so-so track with "Stay Out of Trouble."
"Stay Out of Trouble" is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, now granted, I only listened to this album maybe 2, 3. I was rebuilding my drum set this week, so I listened to it about 3 times, 3 or 4 times. Nice. Yeah, the garage is filled with drum sets, drum parts everywhere. Now the track that bored me, okay, was the last track. "Reason to Be" bored the hell out of me. But I like it now because I watched the video that they made for it.
I never saw the video.
Oh my God, it's so great. It's so 1979. Like, imagine walking into a cave and there's Kansas. Random members of Kansas are in this cave playing music. It's great.
That's what the video
But you were saying on the other podcast about, Dio's video being cheesy. This one's cheesy, which made me like the song a little bit more. Because Reason to Be, to me, like ended the album kind of like meh.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of a flat ending. I'm not a big fan of that either.
But the video's great. Like I'll listen to the song again just to watch the video and laugh because it's a video from 1979. It's gonna be funny. Overall, solid Kansas album, but I can see why it's not mentioned in the same breath.
Yeah,
as Songs for America.
Definitely the underdog of their kind of golden era. Like it's the last one they did in the 70s, and after that they like really took that turn and did more like their like 80s, like more mainstream kind of poppy kind of stuff, which people love, and it's all fantastic songs and great music. That's just at that point they kind of fall out of favor for me. I like all their like 70s stuff, and for me, like Monolith is like the last great album they did before they do all their 80s stuff.
Yeah, it's solid.
And then they lie low, and then in 90s and 2000s they come out with those two rock solid Freaks of Nature and Somewhere to Elsewhere, which we've done in the past.
Yeah,
but I really like Monolith, and it's funny enough. Someone just posted after we decided our assignments for the week. There's a Kansas fan page that I'm on, of course, that I follow, and someone just posted like, "Oh, I just got Monolith and listened to it for the first time," and so I jumped on like, "Oh, I think it's really underrated, and I think it's really cool, and I think you're really gonna like it." And sure enough, a bunch of people jumped on like, "Oh yeah, it's great. This is awesome. It's really good stuff."
Well, I can definitely see if you're a Kansas fan, this is more the same.
It's definitely worth a listen. If you're into the band, you should check it out, especially because there's some real bangers on there. I'm really a fan of A Glimpse of Home. That's probably my favorite song on the record.
It's a short album, and there wasn't a bad track.
That's another thing too. It's short. You finish it in under an hour. It's really quick.
Well, that's how all the albums were because you had
so much.
Mm-hmm. Only because you had to fit it on a record, on an actual LP, on a vinyl record. So there's only so much you could do. And this could be a whole other podcast because I think that's why those albums from back then are regarded as better than the albums overall, than the albums that have like 15 songs on them. Because you're putting, you write 15 songs, but you only could put your 8 best.
Yeah, you got to trim half of them out. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, but overall, solid Kansas album. But it can't be mentioned with "Song for America," "Point of No Return," or "Left Overture." It's not. I can see why it's not mentioned with them. Like those three to me are my favorite albums. Like we were talking,
many a favorite. Yeah.
On the other podcast, we were talking. "Left Overture" is almost to me like a perfect album. From beginning to end. This, like I said. It's a Kansas album. It's not going to be bad. And it was short. It was good. It was good. It doesn't hit me like the other stuff. And maybe it's just because I really haven't heard these songs over and over again. Like I've heard "Song for America." I've heard "Carry On My Wayward Son" so many times. I've heard, Miracles.
Miracles Out of Nowhere.
Yeah, there you go. Oh boy, it's been a long week. So there you go. There's our homework for the week. So if you liked what we do, Rock Talk with Doc Rocker Facebook group, join it. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring that bell, so every time we put up new content, you know about it. That's right.